Your Legislators is made possible by the Minnesota Corn Growers Association. From developing best practices that help farmers better protect our natural resources to the latest innovations in corn-based plastics, Minnesota corn farmers are proud to invest in third-party research, leading to a more sustainable future for our local communities. Minnesota Farmers Union, standing for agriculture, working for farmers. On the web at mfu.org.
Good evening and welcome to Pioneer Public Television's Your Legislators. I'm Barry Anderson and I'm the host and moderator of our program this evening and all the weeks ahead till the legislature goes home. Before we get to this evening's guests, though, I want to take this opportunity to remember a guest from long ago who passed away last week at the age of 72, retired district court judge and former state senator Tom Neuville of Northfield. Neuville, who was the state senator for the Northfield area for 17 years before his 2008 appointment and subsequent election to the bench, was often on the set of Your Legislators, explaining the details of legislation and engaging in banter with his fellow legislators. He was the author of significant legislation, particularly in family law, and supported public defenders and other bills important to the rule of law. As a district court judge, he helped found and then presided over the Rice County Drug Treatment Court, and in his retirement, he was involved in prison ministry. His least important contribution, no doubt, was as a guest on this program. Often, he was a last-minute volunteer when everyone else was detained by hearings or floor votes. We were all enriched by his wisdom and thoughtfulness, and our condolences to the family of Senator and later Judge Tom Neuville. We begin our program this week, as we do each week, in our effort to unravel the mysteries of St. Paul by introducing our distinguished guests and panelists who will be discussing the legislative issues of the day. I do want to mention, as I do each week, that this is your program, and I invite you to call in with your questions at 800-726-3178 or email your questions to us at yourtv@pioneer.org. We'll see that those questions get to our panel. And I do want to remind our viewers that you can send your questions in when we're not on the air. So if you're on your Tuesday morning run and you think, well, maybe it's Minnesota, maybe you're not running in the cold. But if you're on your Tuesday afternoon walk and you think of a question you want our panel to ask, don't hesitate to send it in to us. Let's turn now to our guests and introduce our panel. Now, one of the things that happens in a legislative session is that we will occasionally have guests who will join us a little bit later, and that's going to happen this evening. Representative Tim Miller will be joining us in a few minutes when he's safely back in his office. But let's begin by introducing our other panelists. And I'm going to give them an opportunity to tell you, the viewer, a little bit about their background, committees they serve on, and other important matters that they need to share with you, our viewers. Let's start with a frequent guest on our program. Actually, you're sort of our Tom Neuville of this era, Senator Frentz. We've called you on a variety of occasions and asked you to fill in for somebody who got tied up in legislative affairs, and that's the basis on which you're with us tonight, and we're delighted that you could be with us here. Senator Frentz, tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Justice Anderson. It's great to see you and my fellow legislators. Folks, I'm Nick Frentz. Greetings from beautiful North Mankato. I'm proud to serve in the DFL Senate Caucus as an assistant minority leader, serve proudly on the Senate Agriculture and Finance Committee, the ranking member on the Energy and Utilities Committee. I also like to serve on the Rules Committee, the Legislative Audit Committee, and anything else that they ask me to do. I'm coming to you live from our basement here because I just came home tonight. My other life is that I'm a lawyer and a partner at Mashka, Reedy, Reese, and Frentz. I've been practicing law for about 35 years, and this week is the start of my 6th year in the Senate, and damn proud of it. Thank you.
We had the privilege of visiting a little bit on the floor of the Senate. It was my privilege and honor to swear in the new Senate President, David Osmek, and the Assistant Sergeant at Arms. And those ceremonial events were pretty special. And of course, it was it was a very special greeting for Senator Tomassoni, and you had to be that was an emotional moment for everybody.
Agreed.
Also joining us from the Senate, District 8 in Alexandria, Senator Bill Ingebrigtsen. Senator Ingebrigtsen has also been a frequent guest with us, and like a couple of other of our guests this evening, will be retiring at the end of this session. We're going to miss you as a guest in our program. We'll have to figure out some way to bring you back for expert commentary or something. Senator Ingebrigtsen, tell our viewers a little bit about yourself. I don't think he can hear us. So we'll come back to Senator Ingebrigtsen, and we'll go to Representative Paul Marquart from District 04B in Dilworth. Representative Marquart, tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Justice Anderson. Always great to be part of this program. And so I represent District 4B, which is all our parts of Clay, Norman, and Becker County. I live in Dilworth, right up by Fargo-Moorhead area. I'm a teacher. I still teach. I taught for 38 years at Dilworth, Glidden, Felton. I teach government. I've been in the state legislature. This is my 22nd year. I currently chair the House Taxes Committee and also serve on the Ways and Means Committee and Education Finance Committee. And as far as family, been married to my wife, Clean, for 40 years. We have 2 daughters, both in education, both married. And one of the reasons, big reasons I'm retiring this year is 3 very fun grandchildren. So Addison, Lincoln, and Hadlin. So that's going to keep me busy in retirement, but it's great to be here. Thank you.
Well, we're delighted to have you join us. And before we're done this evening, I hope to give our 3 retiring members, assuming we can get all the technology working and everybody lined up, give our 3 retiring members to spend a few minutes reflecting on their service and what they see ahead for the legislature. But I think we're going to begin this evening by going right to matters at hand. And let's begin with, first of all, Senator Ingebrigtsen, can you hear us?
I think I can. Can you hear me?
We are good. Tell our viewers a little bit about yourself, Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Well, let's just say I'm techno challenged, gentlemen. As Nick and everybody knows, I had a little hard time getting on there, but nevertheless, here I am. Of course, I'm the sheriff from West Central Minnesota, Alexandria, Fergus Falls, Senate District 8. I'm now starting my 16th year in the Senate. Previous to that, I was, of course, law enforcement and elected sheriff in Douglas County. So right now I'm chairing the Environmental Natural Resource Committee, Finance Committee. And I'm also on Judiciary, which you can about imagine how busy we're going to be there, as well as Senate Finance and various other subcommittees. So thanks for having me.
Well, we're delighted to have you. I thought we would start tonight with a budget question. And this is a question that a viewer sent in earlier today. And the viewer's concerned about the $7 billion surplus. Obviously, it's great to have a surplus, but was raising questions about how large that surplus really was. And for example, we know that there's a workers' compensation shortage that's a little short of $3 billion. There's some money that probably should go into the rainy day fund. And there's also this issue of how much of that surplus is continuing surplus and how much of it is one-time money. And so let's start with you, Senator Frentz. Let's talk about that budget surplus. Good thing to have. How much of it is there really, and what do you see as the priorities in this session for that surplus?
Well, tell your viewer that's a great question to lead with. The budget on paper is $7.7 billion, but if you adjust for inflation, it's a little bit lower than that. The Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund, if fully replenished and also brought back to its previous size, would be about $2.7 billion. Of course, that will help relieve pressure on our small businesses as they wouldn't see an increase in their unemployment insurance rates. We've also got pledges out there to support our frontline workers. And I favor returning some of that money to the taxpayer. The form of rebate checks has been proposed by the governor. Others, I'm okay with that. And I'm sure Representative Marquart would be willing to talk a little bit more about the possibility of longer term individual tax cuts. I'm open-minded to that, but you make a great point, Justice Anderson. We have a one-time surplus. And by the way, the tax rates really didn't change. What changed is the amount of corporate revenue, individual income, and sales tax revenue. That's why we're at the surplus. And whether we want to make a more permanent change, forecasting those changes into the distant future threatens to put us in deficit, but I'm still open-minded to it. So that's the short version. Thank you.
Very, very good. Senator Ingebrigtsen, your thoughts on the surplus?
Well, as far as continuing money, I guess that's kind of up in the air. We don't know anything about that. February, of course, comes out another report from the MMB. Basically another forecast. So we're not real sure where that's going to be. Either up or down from the 7.7. So that's something that we got to look at cautiously. As you know, it's not a budget year. However, there are some things that we do need to, it seems to me, address immediately, and that the unemployment insurance, of course, is one of them. For sure, it's going to be an increase in taxes if we don't address that, and that's of course over, like Senator Frentz said, a little over $2 billion. And we also got to look at some tax reduction, give some meaningful tax reduction that's ongoing. Social Security, for instance, I know that's been bannered around for a while. We're one of the very few states that has that continuing for those that are on Social Security. So I think that's probably one of the front and center tax relief bills, if there is going to be a tax relief bill, as well as public safety. Public safety, it not being a budget year, but public safety is in our face every day, every time we turn the TV on, and you can't just throw money at things like that. I understand that, but there are some incentives that we came out today earlier in our caucus with what we're calling the COPS program, where we've got about $67 million plus dollars for incentives to retain officers and give them somewhat of a bonus, if you will, to stay in the profession. And we're finding out that we're not able to hire officers statewide. I mean, not only Minneapolis, St. Paul, but statewide. And that should be a concern for everybody. So that's going to be one of the big topics, I think, where we're going to be looking at expending dollars. And again, the rainy day fund has been replenished over the years because of some good legislation we did several years ago. So that's in good shape. But again, it would be prudent for us, I think, to wait until after the February forecast before we start looking at expending those dollars.
Representative Marquart, your thoughts on the budget surplus?
Absolutely. We certainly need to wait till February, like Senator Ingebrigtsen just said, but about half of the $7.7 billion is one time, and about half of it is ongoing. So that's kind of, a 50-50 mix. So for priorities on this year, I mean, first of all, I think we have to use caution. If we're looking at investments and tax cuts, which I think should both be into a plan, but we have to be cautious so that we don't overextend into the future, so that we can't pay for important investments in education and healthcare that we know, public safety that we know are always important. So we have to use caution. But some of the priorities that we should have is, first of all, COVID-19 is still part of the problem. And we know that COVID-19 disproportionately hit individuals and small businesses. So if you're an individual who are lower income going into COVID-19, or you did not have a job where you could work from home, you got hit harder during COVID-19. If you were a small business in leisure or entertainment or lodging or restaurants and those, you got hit harder.
No.
We have to, first of all, make sure those individuals and small businesses get to recovery, but also they get to rebuilding. I think that should be job number one. Second, I think probably the biggest issue facing our economy right now is the workforce shortage. I mean, that's leading to increased prices. It's leading to inflation. It's leading to shortages in childcare, nursing, public safety, all of these fields. It's driving up prices and hurting our economy. And one of the things we know is this is being caused by, no surprise, demographers have been talking about this for 2 decades, is that baby boomers like myself are retiring and not enough young people replacing us. In fact, by about 2042, the death rate in Minnesota for the first time in our history will surpass the birth rate. And so that workforce is slowing down. So one thing I think we're going to have to do, and I'm going to look in the tax area, is how can we retain and attract new young people and young families. And I think we've got to really look at those childcare costs, student loan costs, housing, and those things, and really make a difference and reduce costs in those areas. And finally, public safety. And public safety always should be the state's top priority. I mean, when I was the mayor and back in Dilworth, we'd send out surveys to our residents, and the number one question was, how safe do you feel in your neighborhood? Because I have felt that if you don't feel safe in your neighborhood, no other service matters. So I know there's been a lot of talk about public safety this session, but to me, it should always be a top priority. And I think what's been encouraging about the talk on public safety, what I hear, Governor Walz has a plan of putting $100 million out to cities and counties and saying, hey, you guys know best how to address your law enforcement public safety concerns. You do that. And I think the Senate and the House also are going to have plans where they're going to put more dollars into retaining and attracting new police officers. How can you prevent crime? How can we make criminals more accountable? I think all of those things I'm hearing, and I think all of those are very effective, and we can bring these plans together. So I'm optimistic on that public safety front that we can get something done this year.
Representative Miller, thanks for joining us from Prinsburg, District 17A. We're talking about the surplus of $7.7 billion, but also the unemployment compensation fund and rainy day funds, which of course have claims on that surplus as well, and its status as I understand it anyway, mostly one-time money. Maybe you could talk a little bit about your vision relative to that surplus.
Yeah, thanks, Barry. And I apologize for my tardiness. I got off the road a little bit late on this one, but I'm glad I was able to join you here close to the beginning. So I appreciate this time. Between the one-time money, so in my opinion, we're in a biennium system. And so we passed a budget last year. We fully funded government with a huge increase in spending last year. And we had a lot of one-time money last year that we spent on a lot of things as well. We were drunk with money last year. And so we have the surplus, and there is some one-time money, there's some ongoing. And so there's two ways that we can give it back to the hardworking taxpayers in Minnesota. With the one-time money, I think we just need to do a straight across the board tax credit. We can figure out the numbers on that. And then this is the time we've been trying to get rid of the Social Security tax. We've been trying to get rid of the death tax, and I'm not a real big fan of the sick tax either, as we call it. So we can for sure draw those down. I don't know the dollar amounts. I have the chair of taxes on here, so he probably just is going to tell me that I just spent $15 billion with what I just said. But in any case, this is not complicated to me. When we talk about how difficult it's been for people over the last couple of years, people that were affected by their jobs, their businesses were harmed over the last couple of years and stuff like that. Let's not make this complicated. Let's just give them their money back and let them do with it what they think they need to do. Government coming in with more programs, government coming in to try and emphasize this, push us this direction or that direction, is just more tinkering on an economy that frankly just needs to catch its breath and get its feet back on the ground.
So we have a question from a viewer who wants to talk about sports betting. This has been, something that's been kicking around in other states, and the question is, are we going to legalize it here? And there are all kinds of complicated pieces to this, and I think it's a question that we've had before. So let's begin. Let's begin with Senator Ingebrigtsen. What do you think? Sports betting. Anything happening in this session about that?
Well, quite frankly, I've never participated in that. I know there's an awful lot of excitement going on in the legislature with regards to that. However, I don't think the revenue tag or the revenue coming into the state of Minnesota is as large as people would think it is. However, we are seeing a lot of our folks go over to Wisconsin and the other bordering communities doing just that. And one would think that gambling and gambling addiction is certainly something that one should be concerned about. However, if they're going to be doing it anyway, I guess one way of not solving that problem, I guess we're not it's not that you can't fight the problem. The problem is that that those dollars are going someplace else and not staying here in Minnesota. So I'm a little undecided myself. I know my caucus is, I think overall, I would have to say in favor of it, as well as I think it's certainly a bipartisan thing. However, it remains to be seen, I guess, whether this happens. But it's certainly got some legs in the legislature this year. I can say that.
Representative Marquart, your thoughts? Sports betting.
Well, it's not a top priority for me. I just think we have a lot of other things to do. More important, we're still, like I said, helping people recover from COVID-19. As Representative Miller mentioned, people have been through a lot in the last 2 years, and let's take care of this first. And I haven't been privy to any discussions and so forth, but like Senator Ingebrigtsen says, I think there is some legs gaining on this, and it's mainly probably something we're going to be dealing with this session. But right now, it's kind of out of mind, out of sight as far as I'm concerned. I just don't see right now where it improves the quality of life for the average, everyday person that I think we really have to have this session really trying to benefit.
Representative Miller, wolf season. What do you think? We're coming to the wolf season in a minute. Sports betting.
So sports betting. So I came in to office being very clear on my position of the expansion of betting. I'm not for it. I have been consistent with that since I've been in office, and I'll continue to be. This is no disregard to what people's interests are. I guess I'm but one vote on this. I haven't really pressed the issue hard, but when the vote comes, I don't support it. I don't think we need to have more ways to legally gamble. We have enough of those, and if you look, the way that I understand this law is we're trying to shore up something that could be protected against lawsuits. And I might be wrong with that, but that's the way I've understood it. You can already do the sports gambling in Minnesota. There's just some concerns about kind of firming that up a little bit. So no, I wouldn't support any expansion like that.
Senator Frentz, sports gambling.
I think I can support it, but not if it gets jammed down someone's throat. It would have to be part of a group effort where there's peace in the valley. There's concerns that we have in the same way we have concerns about legalizing recreational marijuana. There are points that have been made by my fellow legislators about some of the downside, and I see those. And I also agree that the revenue should not be the main focus. I mean, I think we want to have high quality of life. Finally, I think it's got momentum in some ways. And so my guess is as it becomes more common and more visible in other states, that will create pressure on the parties to reach a deal. And I'll be fine when that day comes. I have to agree with Representative Miller. I don't think that day is coming this session.
So I jumped the gun there a little bit, Representative Miller, but let's talk about another question that a viewer has, and that is, what about a wolf season this year? Is there going to be a wolf season?
Well, I'm actually not the person to ask. Senator Ingebrigtsen might know. I don't want to pick on him. He might know a little bit more about this. I do know that this has been a discussion every year. I think since I've been in office, we had some times to where there was a moratorium on it, then it opened up, and then I think we're in a moratorium again. A lot of that has to do with what the feds say. But I do support the wolf hunting. I think it needs to be done not only for many different reasons, but I would support it. If we have the opportunity to have a decision on that, I think we should go forward and institute a wolf season this year.
Senator Ingebrigtsen, in fact, you and I have had the opportunity on this program on at least a couple of occasions to talk about the wolf season and wolf hunting. And so Representative Miller's reference to you, I think, was fortuitous. What do you think? Wolf season this year or not?
Well, I don't know about this year, but it definitely can be now. The federal government now has taken them off the list again. So it needs a statute similar to what we had in 2011. In fact, I was part of that process, And at that time, we had upwards of 2,500 to at least reported 3,000 animals. In fact, we had the third largest population in the North American continent next to Alaska and Canada here in Minnesota alone. So those numbers have grown, certainly. And whenever you talk to Minnesota deer hunters that hunt in the Northeast, I would have to say north of Highway 2 and Northeast, they see a lot of wolf that they hadn't seen before, and not quite so many deer. So like any other animal the DNR manages, I know the DNR is ready for this. They've had a plan in place for a long time. And it will be coming forward this year, I believe, whether, no pun intended, whether it has legs or not. I think it's certainly going to come forward. But nevertheless, again, I truly believe, and it's a beautiful animal. I get that. I understand loving the animal. I love, all of our animals and our fish in this state. But at the same time, we manage every other animal, and we should do this as well. So these numbers are up, and I think we should pass it. And I certainly will add it to my bill, as I did last year. It was in my bill. So,
Representative Marquart, your thoughts, wolf season.
Well, I have supported it in the past, and so if it does come up for a vote, I would support it.
Senator Frentz?
I would support it. It's not a front burner issue down here in the Mankato, North Mankato area, but I want to just agree with Senator Ingebrigtsen on another thing. By and large, Minnesota has done a pretty good job over the last 20 and 30 years managing the animals. I think of CWD and some of our progress, and I think the wolf issue is much the same. So it's got my support. It's not something I hear a lot about down here. There's no wolves in this basement, I can tell you that. And whether it happens this year or not, I can't quite tell.
I don't think, unless the fauna has changed around the Mankato area, that the wolves were a significant issue. At least they weren't 40 years ago. Maybe that's changed.
Well, I can't speak for where you're from on Broad Street, but I can say over here in North Mankato, we don't have that issue.
All right, very good.
And I'm certain, Judge, that your caller probably was from the Cattle Association or a deer hunter, and I hear this all the time. And it's something that has to be looked at again. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's an issue that affects particular parts of the state in a very significant way. In other parts of the state, it's kind of a head scratcher. It doesn't really register at all. So, but we do have the entire state, all 87 counties to be concerned about, right? So,
right. That's right.
So let's talk a little bit about transportation issues as it relates to all 87 counties. There have been transportation issues that have been much in the news lately. Some of them concern light rail transit. The Southwest Light Rail Transit line has been very much in the news. But of course, we also have transportation issues that affect greater Minnesota as well. And so let's start, Representative Marquart, with you. Maybe you could talk a little bit about transportation issues and to the extent that you have some thoughts about the Southwest line, perhaps we can include those as well. The floor is yours.
The transportation issue is huge. And of course, in rural Minnesota and around the state, and I think MnDOT says we need about $600 million of new revenue a year just to maintain our current roads and bridges. So, how do we get there? Now, the money we're getting on the infrastructure from the feds is quite significant. I mean, literally billions of dollars, like 5 years worth of what we receive in our gas tax. Be about 5 years of that we're getting. I mean, it's a very significant amount, but we've never politically been able to come up with a way to really pay for it ongoing. So if you're a Democrat, you would support a gas tax increase. If you're a Republican, you support increasing the general fund, which we have done. And so we never seem to get kind of a combination. I think the best way to do that would be a combination, but it's not going to happen politically. And I wouldn't support it unless there was a buy-in by both sides. But to get the 600 million, you could do 200 million in a gas tax, which would be 6 or 7 cents increase. That's a user tax. And what folks don't realize is that even though on the gas tax, rural Minnesota pays about 50% of it, they get back about 70% under the formula, a constitutional formula that says it can only go for roads, can't go for light rail or anything else. So it's a user tax. And then take 200 out of the general fund, which the Republicans support, and maybe bond for 200 million. So you got people together and you could come up with the 600 million. Now, I wouldn't propose that unless both sides got together on that. Otherwise, it's no good at all. My parents got married in 1935 during the Great Depression. And I went back and looked at stats as to what we paid in the gas tax as per your income, your family income. They were paying about 3 or 4 times more of their income in a gas tax back then than we are now. So we certainly haven't kept up with the burden. But my parents understood the importance of paying into an infrastructure system and how that would benefit their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren down the line. So until we can, kind of get past the ideological barriers which we have that neither side can cross, we're just going to kind of try to piece things together through bonding bills and whatever. But we haven't really come up with a good permanent way to fund our education or our transportation needs into the future, and that's unfortunate. I hope someday we can get there. And I'll leave others to talk about light rail.
Representative Miller, your thoughts?
Oh, sure. Thanks for handing that one off, Bill. Thanks, Representative Marquart.
Representative Miller?
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to get into the conversation here because I know that's what people want to hear, but you keep throwing issues at me that I kind of say, well, here's where I stand on it. So one comment real quick on the gas tax. The challenge, I don't really completely disagree with Representative Marquart, but the problem is yeah, there is kind of the ideological divide on the gas tax, but one of the challenges is consistently people are telling us they don't want us to increase the gas tax. We kind of serve it to them in different ways and we can kind of get a little bit of buy-in, but when it really comes down to it, they don't support that. And that's quite frankly a problem if you're doing something that people don't want to do. Now they want the money spent on roads, so how you make that connection, I don't know. Now on the light rail, I'm in rural Minnesota, so just like Senator Frentz not really having to worry too much about Walz, I don't have to worry too much about light rail out in Prinsburg, Minnesota. But I do have to concern myself with the sheer cost of it. And it's just frankly, you have to, you can't always go just dollar for dollar whether this is an investment. You put some intangibles in there as to what the value is in the bigger picture, something like that. But in order to justify the incredible cost, not only for the construction, but for the operation of light rail, you really have to stretch far the intangibles that are there. It is so expensive per rider. It's so expensive per mile that you're doing it when you compare it to other modes of transportation. And it just seems like we've become a state that's become infatuated with something just simply is not the right fit for our state. And yet we keep pressing forward with it. So I wish we would just stop, but every time I say stop, we just seem to keep expanding this because I believe that one of the things that we also did, and it isn't light rail, but now we have the train line that's going up to Dilworth, or at least the beginnings of that, which is just makes no sense to me.
Senator Frentz, transportation.
Well, I'll take the light rail part of it first. I'm a believer in mass transit. I think it saves us money. I served on the Senate Transportation Committee, and the public share of the transportation on light rail when it's at its normal ridership is actually pretty low. We had, I think, 225,000 riders for the week of the Super Bowl. And I think we can all see that with electricity, it's operated at a very economical rate. So I like that. But there's another lesson in there. And legislators that succeed, in my opinion, are listening to the public. There were members of the public that raised these concerns about Southwest Light Rail and the progress of the construction that were, I don't want to say they were ignored, but those problems are now back. And some of the neighbors that were concerned are now saying, I told you so. And those are leading to cost overruns. I know private companies have these kinds of problems. My grandfather used to talk about the Edsel as not working out exactly like Ford Motor Company wanted it. That's a different Zoom call. But I think you want to listen to the public at all stages of these huge projects. to the question of stable, ongoing funding, I came in as a supporter of the gas tax, and as a greater Minnesota legislator, I thought that was the smarter way, because then you got the stable long-term funding that would allow the county engineers, MnDOT, to make some plans out over several years. I still think stable long-term funding has eluded us, but I will admit this, with the sort of one-time money that we've put into it in bonding, with the money coming from the feds, it's fair to say we have some money now in the short term. To Representative Marquart's point, maybe we can find a solution. Again, I think it's got to be something everyone buys into. I don't see just sort of jamming something through with a thin margin. Our transportation needs are too important not to find a little piece in the valley. I hope we do.
Senator Ingebrigtsen?
The light rail, I think, has been pounded on a little bit here. Of course, being a rural legislator, I'm not in favor of that at all. And I my 16 years, going on 16 years down there, sit right next to the light rail where I live, and I see the ridership there, and it's just not there. I mean, it just isn't. Now, it's the end of the rail. I'll give you that. I understand it gets busier down towards the university. But nevertheless, for years there, they weren't charging. You were on your honor to charge or to actual pay. You can't expect to run a business like that and make it work. So it just seems to be a big money hole that never ends. And as Senator Frentz said, I think listen to the folks. There's no question about that. Start listening to the people down there. Push comes to shove, if we decide to build something, or I should say the 7-county metro decides to build something, they can go ahead and pay for it. I really don't feel that I would support anything out here with regards to that. With regards to the gas tax, Governor Walz came in with a 20 cent gallon gas tax. That was like 76% increase. That didn't hit over too well, especially when we had enough money in the coffers. In fact, last year in the last budget cycle, we put out the biggest transportation bill in the history of Minnesota. So we've been paying attention to transportation, and I think the cost of fuel is a huge driver of concern for especially rural Minnesota, where they have to drive so far to the jobs or drive so far to school and whatnot. Now I just see it go up another 10 cents a gallon, just at a blink of an eye goes up another 10 cents a gallon. So I think this isn't only just a state issue. It's certainly been a federal issue with the pipeline situation that's going on, and what's going on in Russia is affecting us all. And I don't think the states are doing, at least Minnesota's not doing a very bad job. But that federal money we talk about, that the endless amount of money that's shaking out of the tree coming from Washington, D.C. is kind of interesting. Let's never forget that's going to have to either be paid back by either us, and I don't think that's going to happen in our lifetime. It's going to be our kids. So we got to be real careful of just spending federal money just because it shows up. But unfortunately, that's what's going on.
So we've got two questions, which are, I think, if I've correctly analyzed the partisan coin correctly, they play in different partisan camps. One viewer wants to know, are we going to get the so-called Walz checks on the Ventura check model that we talked about earlier? And another viewer is concerned about other issues and wants to know whether or not the state would consider using the surplus to eliminate the tax on Social Security. Now, I don't want to overstate the case. Obviously, there may be people in various camps that support these two theories, but at least it strikes me that they may come from different angles. I'm just wondering if our panel can quickly tell us, what do they think the chances are that either one or both of these might be in some final bill? Let's start with Representative Marquart. What do you think? So tax
I think
using. Go ahead.
No, I think there's first of all, Governor Walz puts about over half of the budget surplus right back into the pockets of businesses and individuals. $2.7 billion replenishing the UI trust fund, $1 billion to frontline workers, and $700 million in the Walz checks. So, I mean, that's $4.4 billion out of the $7.7 billion. So when people give the money back, the Governor Walz is doing just that. So, I mean, anytime the governor proposes something, there's always a good chance that can happen. I think providing tax cuts for senior citizens should be an absolute top priority. When it comes to Social Security, the thing to remember is that on the Social Security benefits, 68% of all Social Security benefits are not currently taxed. I mean, it's a complex formula, but 68% of those benefits are not taxed, and 55% of all Social Security recipients are not taxed. If you are living only on Social Security, you are not being taxed one dime on those dollars. In fact, your income's under about 50,000, you're probably not being taxed hardly anything at all. So what I'd like to see is do things, and this will certainly be part of the mix, but I'd like to look at things that would cut taxes for all senior citizens, not just the wealthiest Minnesotans, and that could be in property taxes. Our senior citizens, they live in a home or in a rental, or they might be in a nursing home or a medical facility. Let's lower property taxes. Let's lower rent costs. Let's make sure those nursing homes are the highest quality they absolutely can be. I think that's what seniors really need, and I think should be a big part of it. But cuts for senior citizens absolutely is going to be a top priority in this session.
Representative Miller, Social Security tax cuts and direct rebate checks. What do you think?
Well, as I stated in the beginning, I'm for addressing that Social Security income tax problem. As far as the checks, I think it's kind of a small gesture towards a bigger problem. In writing checks directly to people, you may not. You're going to be sending checks to people that didn't pay any taxes at all, and $300 is $300. I think is what the rough dollar amount is. That's why I say do a tax rebate. That's more reflective of the people that pay taxes. We've had some discussion as to whether it's refundable or not. I think that's a fair question. But anyway, my concern with what Representative Marquart said, my concern about addressing things like property tax, and I don't want to put words into his mouth. Representative Marquart and I have a very good, respectful relationship, and I'm on his committee, so I want to continue that. But I want to make sure that I'm clear about one thing. When I hear putting it into property taxes, one of the big priorities, I believe, of the governors, but I have heard this, is to increase local government aid. And what happens is we put more money into local government aid, and we call it property tax reduction because it's going against what property taxes pay for. But those communities don't reduce their property taxes at all. They just take on the more local government aid. So that's problematic for me. If there is money that is going to address property tax issues, okay. But I want it to have a direct reflection on that. I don't just want it to go into the pot and then have the city maintain what its property tax rates are and what its collections are at the same rate.
Senator Frentz?
75% chance there's a Walz check in some amount. I do think most people in my neck of the woods are saying give some of it back. I've said in TV and radio already, I think at least half should go back in some direct form. You asked what the odds are, so I said it, there it is. I would say also, I look at it a little differently, Representative Miller. Even those that are at the lower levels that don't pay income tax, they pay in other ways. They pay sales tax. They support our companies, and I think they're deserving of some of these direct rebates. And I think if you went to the average family and said, look, you can get, just to take an example of an individual cut in the second tier of a quarter point, you can get $6 more in every paycheck, or we can give you $300 right now. I think most Minnesotans in that income level would say, I'll just take the 300. Anyway, that's my sense of it. On Social Security, you got to have me follow the tax chair of the House. There is an argument that is not the best way to help all of our seniors, in that it benefits disproportionately the wealthiest seniors. And I know some very nice men and women who are in that category. We have Glenn Taylor living in this area, one of the nicest men you'll ever meet, but I don't want our tax policy to put him at the top. I also am hearing that AARP is not that excited about it, and that tells me that some of the other priorities that we might look at with that money may favor the larger number of seniors. And with that, I'll just say, anytime you're on with the House tax chair, you have to watch your answers.
Very good. Very good. Very safe answer there, Senator Frentz. Senator Ingebrigtsen?
Well, I guess I'm not worried about being safe, quite frankly. Paul, you and I know each other. We walk together occasionally in St. Paul, and
Yep.
and trying to keep ourselves a little sane when after a tough day at work. But I say we give the dollars. If we're going to give the dollars back, we give it in tax credits to those that have actually paid the taxes, and that might be in the form of property taxes. As far as the naming the checks coming back, I'm not sure that Governor Ventura even called them Jesse checks. I think somebody just made that up. I'm a little concerned about that. I'm saying maybe individual overcharge checks should be called an overcharge check coming back. Quite frankly, that's what we have done is we have overcharged. I mean, that's what a surplus is about. Now that a case could be made. A lot of that came from the federal government. Nevertheless, it's still out of our pocket one way or the other, and we've just basically overcharged. So we've got to be prudent as to how we give this back. But a top priority has to be Social Security tax. Glenn Taylor, I don't know Glenn Taylor, never met him, but I don't want to beat up on entrepreneurs like him. I don't want, if he's paid his taxes over the years and it's a lot more than me, I'm awful sure, then he should be getting an equal amount back. I don't understand why we would not do that for especially the entrepreneurs that make Minnesota great the way it is right now. So. It's going to be quite a debate, no question about it. Individual checks coming back, I'm for the frontline workers getting their checks, but after that, I think tax credits is going to be more meaningful.
So one of the interesting things about this evening's program is we have three members, Senator Ingebrigtsen, Representative Marquart, and Representative Miller, all who are going to be leaving at the end of this session and are not seeking another term in their respective House, the Senate and House. And I thought it would be appropriate. We have about 10 minutes left. I've got a couple of other issues that we may get to, but I want to leave enough time to give each of them an opportunity to maybe talk about two things. And the two things I have in mind are first, as you reflect back on your time and service here in St. Paul at the Capitol, is there something in particular that you think you've accomplished or participated in that was particularly significant? And I'd like to have you share that with our viewers. And is there any advice that you would offer to the legislature that will be coming, the legislature that will be elected in November and will start on January 2 of 2023, that you think that they should focus on, maybe institutionally or maybe from policy? It's kind of an open field question, but I think we should give an opportunity to our retiring members. And Senator Ingebrigtsen, I'm guessing you might have a little bit in age on Representative Miller and Representative Marquart, so maybe we'll give you the floor first. Maybe you could talk a little bit about your
Judge, I'm not even anywhere as over their age, not that far actually. And as you can see, I got a full head of hair, more than I can say for.
Yeah, well, you're doing better than I am. So anyway, there is that.
Ouch! Tough room.
My wife has asked me that very question. What are you going to say when they say, "What have you accomplished when you've been in the Senate?" Well, I think just getting here is a great accomplishment, and it's a great honor to serve the people of West Central Minnesota. I've served like 5 or 6 different counties over the going on 16 years here now, and not only as the sheriff, but now in the Senate, and just the idea, and people need to know that there's 201 of us that come to the legislature, and it's a true honor. There isn't very many that get that opportunity. Tom Bach was talking about it on the floor, I think, last year, and I think we're upwards of about 1,700 state senators in the history of Minnesota since there was a Democrat-Republican split. And that's quite an honor. I mean, that's a lot of people that have an opportunity to run for office. Not too many get that opportunity that we've all had, and it really is. But it is a service, and there's many things. I can talk about the seniors that I've helped a couple of years ago when the senior homes that were so charged and real, having a tough time. We were able to recover them, I think, and get them back on track. I think that's another priority that we should be looking at this year. And hopefully the administration agrees that there's wings out here in these beautiful nursing homes that are being closed up because there's just not enough money to pay the help. And so that's one of the things that I hope this new legislature pays more attention to. We got to take care of those people who have been working so hard to take care of us to this point, and let's not forget those. I know Senator Abler talks about taking care of the mentally challenged folks, and we, at the very least, we have to take care of them. And there's some of those homes that now are being threatened to be shut down, and I've always been an advocate for that, and will continue to do that. And of course, my public safety, I think I helped an awful lot with that, and I like to say that I certainly stood against the recreational marijuana, and hopefully I can get to my 16th year by saying that we have not yet made that foolish step of making it legalized here in Minnesota. So, for me to find out, to give you one, it's tough, but it's been a true honor to work with the gentlemen that are sitting here today, and the many that have come and gone. And I want to put a special shout out to Tomassoni, Senator Tomassoni, who has been just a tremendous partner and a friend of mine that's now going through some real medical issues. Working with guys like that, and it becomes a real family, and I really appreciate that. Really appreciate the folks that allowed me to be here.
Representative Marquart.
Well, Senator Ingebrigtsen said it so well, and it is just a great sense of honor that I've had serving the residents of 22 years who've had the confidence in you to send you back to St. Paul. And you drive on that road where you're going past the St. Paul Cathedral, and at night you look and the Capitol is all lit up, the dome is all lit up, and you just think, I work there and I represent the folks back home in the state of Minnesota. And what an honor. That it just gives you chills when you would kind of look at that and just see that. And probably the proudest thing that I felt actually was the most enjoyable thing I did as a legislator was going door to door, both in the election years and the non-election years, because you got to meet so many wonderful people and meet so many friends and really understand what people were thinking about. But it's just been such a high honor, as Senator Ingebrigtsen mentioned, and just, I have to, thank my family and my constituents and my students who I've taught for 38 years, who kept me so optimistic and young and so forth, for allowing me to serve not only the state for 22 years, but my local community for another 13. And, I look back and think about, what could I tell legislators into the future? And, when I talk to my government students, you've got the 10 steps on how a bill becomes a law, come up with an idea, it's introduced and so forth. But what I tell them that the textbook never mentions is the personal relationships of legislators and the respect and the trust that they have among legislators that really makes legislation work. And you don't see that in a textbook, but that's really what makes it work. And, I look back at things that I didn't really accomplish anything. It was the entire legislative body and the governor who ultimately made things happen for your community. And I hope legislators into the future just remember that you're one body there, you're working together, and even though we can get these political rifts, it's those relationships of bond of trust and responsibility that really brings legislation together. So it's been a great 22 years, and I leave with absolutely no regrets. And it's just, I am very optimistic about the future too. As a teacher, I look at our youth, and it's a good future coming up.
Representative Miller, you've got about a minute and a half or so. Sorry.
Okay, I'll be brief. I think Representative Marquart hit it on the head about the relationships. That's what I would tell people. Politics can be rough. The partisanship can be rough, but in our society right now, we've lost trust with each other. We want to fight before we do anything else. And I really hope that we can change that. And people that are coming into this legislature, build relationships with people that might surprise you, who you want to meet with, because you will find commonalities that will surprise you. Look for people that show you respect and you return respect back to them. I really want to probably finish this up with what I started with. When I was first elected, my good friend, State Senator Dave Thompson, I walked into the House chamber, and I'm a very blue-collar guy growing up, and I was amazed that I had a seat in this beautiful room. And I talked to him about it, and he said, never forget that feeling, never forget that your responsibility that you have in this room. So if I leave any legacy from here, I hope that I served the legislature well, and that I served it with the honor that it deserves.
Very good. I want to thank all of our guests, Senator Frentz. We're not going to give you an opportunity, I guess. You have 15 seconds. Anything you want to share with us as we're going out?
It's an honor to serve with all three of you gentlemen. It's an honor, Justice Anderson, to be on your show. And if I echo anyone's sentiments, that when you give respect to another legislator, you get it back, and that helps your constituents and helps the state. And you should all three be proud. We're very grateful.
All right. On that positive and upbeat note, I want to thank all four of our guests this evening. I want to remind you, viewers who were with us this evening, that this is your program. You can call in your questions or send them in to us via email as we go off the air this evening, and we'll see that next week's panel get them. I want to remind you that we will be back here next week, and we'll be back every week that follows until the legislature goes home. Thank you all, and good night.
Your Legislators is made possible by the Minnesota Corn Growers Association. From developing best practices that help farmers better protect our natural resources to the latest innovations in corn-based plastics, Minnesota corn farmers are proud to invest in third-party research, leading to a more sustainable future for our local communities. Minnesota Farmers Union, standing for agriculture, working for farmers. On the web at mfu.org.